Hello there, and welcome to a video. Been a while since we've done a ranking video. By that I mean a couple weeks. But I mainly rank sports stuff, but I've always wanted to rank movies. So I thought I'd rank one of the all-time and most beloved film franchises of all time, the Star Wars films. This is a franchise with 11 films. That's the 9 in the Skywalker saga, plus the 2 spin-off films, so we're going to be doing those films. And I've created a list that I hopefully we can all respect and enjoy. What do you mean that nobody respects anyone else's Star Wars opinions? So let me just give you some context. I used to be a big Star Wars fan. Then I got on the internet and started to question how big of a Star Wars fan I actually am. So I guess take this list with a pinch of salt, and don't take my opinion seriously. This is just my dumb opinion, and I think I'll give some context for my opinion on each film. So like I said, this is all 11 films. We're doing the live-action theatrical release films. We're not doing the Ewoks movies or the Star Wars Holiday Special or the Disney Plus shows or the Clone Wars TV show. This is just the movies we're doing. Alright, let's do this. Star Wars, star. Okay, let's move on. Coming in 11th place, in my opinion, my least favorite Star Wars film. I actually don't hate any of these Star Wars films, unlike some people. But in last place, I have Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Now, I do want to get this out of the way. I don't really have a lot of nostalgia or strong remembrance of the prequels. I didn't watch them until I was like 10 and didn't really start watching them until I got into my teenage years, so I don't have a lot of nostalgia for the prequels like some, because I don't know if you've seen recently, there's been a little bit of historical revisionism, I would say. People seem to be liking the prequels a lot more. There's been a lot of defenders of them now more recently, because it felt like 10 years ago, these were like the worst things ever created, according to most people. So, my thoughts on Attack of the Clones. It's got a lot of problems, unfortunately. Number one, it's kind of boring. It's got a lot of really... It's got some really bad dialogue, like, I don't like cyan. It's cold, it's dark, and it gets everywhere. And I know Hayden Christensen, there's been some people who have defended him, and I think he's kind of gotten... He's been unfairly the butt of jokes. I mean, I think the problem with the prequels that no one talks about is how George Lucas shouldn't have been the writer-director. Because people forget, for the original films, he only directed the first one. And I think what helped with those films is he had someone that could tell him no. And this time, he didn't have someone that could tell him no, and I think that's the problem with the prequels, and especially this film. And it's got a lot of problems within the film. It's the Star Wars film I've watched the least, and I think out of all of them, it's the most boring. Coming in 10th place, I have Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. The unfitting conclusion to the Skywalker saga, and what was a very interesting trilogy that we'll get into later. So, we all saw Last Jedi. You go to some people, it's the greatest thing ever created. You go to some, it's the absolute worst thing created. And this film, it was originally going to be directed by Colin Trevorrow, who did the Jurassic World films. But my guess is Disney freaked out with the divisive response of Last Jedi. They brought back J.J. Abrams and delivered what I like to call pandering the film. The movie that had tried to appease both sides, but, well, failed dramatically at appeasing both sides because, well, it split already a divided fan base even more, and yeah. Now, I've seen Colin Trevorrow's treatment, what he was going to do, Duel of the Fates, and it's interesting, though I don't know how much better it would have been. This is the guy who gave us the Locust plotline in Jurassic World Dominion, so not putting all my money on that guy, but it would have been interesting to see what he would have done, and this film... It basically, I think the worst thing it does, and whether or not you like Last Jedi, it's so obvious it presses Command Z on everything that film does. Command Z, Command Z. It's like, it's trying to erase that film, essentially, and... Yeah, and the ending... There's a lot of... I don't know if I was the only one who felt this, but when I was watching the final scene, it felt like it was ripping off Avengers Endgame, which... There was no emotion, it just didn't feel like it, and... This is a pretty emotionless ending to what should have been the epic finale to the Skywalker saga, though, who knows, there could be more coming up, but yeah, this is a pretty disappointing film, and I think when people, I'm not one of these Disney Star Wars haters. I think they've done some really good stuff. Now, they've done some really bad stuff as well. I can totally understand why not everyone's a fan of what they've done, but This is the film that I think I won't argue with people that it's an unworthy conclusion to what should have been an epic conclusion to the Skywalker saga. At number 9, I have Solo, a Star Wars story. This is probably the Star Wars movie I think about the least. It's the film I think I've watched the least. It's just there. Now, this film had a bit of a rough production. It was going to be directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who, if you guys don't know who they are, they did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, and the Lego movie, and they also have done the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie, so they're obviously very talented, young and upcoming guys, and if you've seen their films, they're very colorful, they have a lot of energy to them, and I don't know what happened. They either, I think, had a falling out with the people at Lucas, so they either left or got fired, and then they brought Ron Howard, who, if you don't know who Ron Howard is, he's, well, started out as an actor. He was on Andy Griffin's show in Happy Days. He was a child actor to start out. And then he turned to directing. He did movies like Parenthood, The Grinch, and Apollo 13, and A Beautiful Mind, which he won an Oscar for. So he's obviously a very good director, but obviously, two different types of directors with different styles, kind of more younger directors with a lot of energy, while a more older director who, I don't, I mean, Ron Howard's a good director, but though, I don't know what was the last real good movie he's directed, though, and unlike another film that had a director swap, Justice League, this movie doesn't feel like a Frankenstein monster. It flows coherently, but I think the biggest thing about Solo, I think it commits, is it's just not that memorable. The only scene I remember is Darth Maul shows up. Alden Ehrenreich does a solid job as Han Solo. He's no Harrison Ford, but he does an okay job, and hey, he got to be an Oppenheimer. He was good in that film. Donald Glover's fun as Lando, but again, he's not Billy D. Williams. It's just a forgettable film. It's the film I think about the least, and there's just nothing that special about it. And at the end of the day, I feel like that's the worst thing a Star Wars movie can commit, is being forgettable. It's not a terrible film in my opinion. I think it's fun at times, but very forgettable, unfortunately. At number 8, we have Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. About 10 years ago, this was the worst thing ever created, according to everyone. All you had to show to prove this movie was this. Misa Jar Jar Binks said, Misa here for fights and clumsy times. Misa here for comic relief. That and this is pod racing. This film has a lot of problems, and some of them are pretty easy to pinpoint. Yeah, Anakin being a child was a poor call on Lucas's part. Jar Jar Binks is freaking annoying. And now, this movie has always had its defenders. The scene that many people love and will not argue is it does have the great lightsaber battle between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, with John Williams' epic ho 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 ho. Yeah, it's a really bad score. But this is it's unfortunately got a lot of problems. Really bad dialogue, outdated effects. I can see why some people will have some spawn memories of it, but for me, it's not really a Star Wars film I love, and I think it sucks. I think what many people hate about the prequels is there is some way they could have been great, and maybe if they tweaked a few things, it could have been great. You could even say that about the sequels, but yeah, I just don't. I know some, like I said, I know some people have like nostalgia for the prequels. I'm not one of those people, and I know this is a film that I've seen some people have defended, but I'm just not one of those. I don't think it's as bad as some people, originally tried to make it out to be, but it's not a great film in my opinion. At number 7, I have Star Wars The Last Jedi, the Star Wars movie I'm the most conflicted about. Part of me, when I made this list, couldn't decide if I had it way too low or not. I definitely would say it's better than the other 4 I ranked, but I couldn't decide whether I liked it more over the others. And I really don't know what to think about this film. Every time I watch it, I feel like I have a different experience. Sometimes I watch it and I'm like, hey, this film is good. Why does the internet love to hate on this film? And then part of me is like, okay, maybe they have some points. I really don't know what to think about it, because there's a lot of stuff I really do like in this film. The throne room scene is epic. The scene at the end is very good. The stuff between Rey and Kylo Ren is actually kind of good. I know some people didn't love what they did with Luke, but I think if they did a few things differently, I think it could have been done a little better. And one thing I do kind of respect about this film, that I don't think a lot of people talk about, is I think, like I said, the problem with the sequels is I don't think they had a plan J.J. Abrams did the first film, and then this was going to be directed by Rian Johnson. I think they were like, hey, this is where this film ends. You need to pick up where this left off. And, I think Rian Johnson delivered. I think his version of a Star Wars film, and I respect what he tried to do. I think that's kind of maybe why I somewhat defend it. But I can understand there are some problems with the film. The Rey and Rose plot line is kind of bad and doesn't make a ton of sense. There are some stuff I do like about this film, like visual. I will say this about the sequels: visually looking, they are amazing, and this is one of the best looking Star Wars film. There are some great scenes in this film, obviously. So I'm conflicted on this film. I can't decide. Do I love it? I don't hate it. Obviously, I don't hate any of these films, but I don't know. Like, sometimes I watch it, and I'm like, I liked it. Then other times I watch it, and I'm like, meh. There are some things about the film I wish were done differently and maybe done better. And unfortunately, this is what started the great Star Wars divide that we're still seeing. And look, I'm not one of these idiots who says, it ruined my childhood. Seriously, it's a movie. Relax, people. But yeah, this film, while I do like some stuff about it, it unfortunately does have its problems. At number 6, I have Rogue One, and it's kind of like Solo. It's the Star Wars movie I kind of forget about, but think about the least. But I think this is a good film nonetheless. It's not amazing. It's not the most memorable Star Wars film ever, but it has some nice scenes. The scene at the end when they're trying to get the plans sent is, in my opinion, amazing, especially on the beach. That's really good. The Darth Vader scene is the best, especially at the end. That's amazing. But it's just, it's a nice little bonus episode. You don't need to watch it, but it's fun. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a good film. I have fun with it. The characters are fun. Jyn and Andor were good characters, though, but it's just not as memorable as the other Star Wars film, and like, let's be real, I'm probably never gonna even Last Jedi, I might watch it over Rogue One. Just really nothing of value, unfortunately, in Rogue One. Don't hate it. There's some stuff I really like about the film. Some of the callbacks to the original are great, but that could be also argued as a weak point. It's in my opinion, a good but not great film. At number 5, I have Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and this was the prequel film that had its defenders early on. There were some who have argued that this is one of the best Star Wars films, and I can see what there is to like about this film. It's got the lightsaber battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan's great. It's got some of the best, more iconic action scenes in the franchise. It's got some really great scenes. Unfortunately, it still has some of the prequel cringe. It still has the really bad Lucas dialogue. The, if you're not my friend, then you're my enemy. I hate you! It's got the prequel cringe, unfortunately, and that's what probably brings it down for some people. And I think if it didn't have it, I would maybe rank this higher, but this is definitely, I think, a really good film. I don't really have nostalgia for the prequels, but I think this is a solid film with some good scenes. It's memorable, and I like some stuff about it. Not my favorite of the Star Wars film, and I don't love it as much as some of the people may do, but I think it's a solid film nonetheless. At number 4, I have Star Wars Return of the Jedi, and now look, I love the original films as much as everyone else does, but I feel like some of the stuff people love to nitpick in the sequels and prequels, I'm like, that's kind of in this one, and I'm going to get this out of the way, and I'm probably going to get shot for it. I'm going to say a hot take, get ready. 3, 2, 1. Luke and Leia being revealed to be brother and sisters is really stupid and dumb. Number 1, it was never set up. Number 2, come on, don't tell me Luke had the hots for Leia in the first and second film. They freaking kissed each other. It was obviously not planned, and I feel like the only reason they added it was because people wanted Luke and Leia to get together rather than her and Han. So it feels a bit out of nowhere and doesn't make a ton of sense. And, people call out in Rise of Skywalker Palpatine's return, and I'm with people. It's a little out of the left field, but this is I think a twist that doesn't make a ton of sense. It's not set up well. And And another thing I don't love is the Ewoks. Like, how did the stormtroopers get defeated by these little teddy bears? Come on. But this film does have a few things going for it that do make it awesome. The Jabba the Hutt break-in scene is amazing. The scene between Luke and Darth Vader is epic and emotional. And I think while it does have some flaws, definitely, and I think this was kind of the, I think that in another movie, Howard the Duck, showed that, hey, maybe George Lucas can't make everything amazing, but I think this is a really good film. It's got some great scenes, obviously, in it, and I feel like, I'm being, like I said, I feel like I'm listing all the bad. Like I said, the Darth Vader and the Jabba the Hutt scenes are amazing. It's emotional, and if this was and this is in some way, in my opinion, a worthy conclusion to the franchise if it stopped here. I mean, so, like I said, I think while this film has some problems in it that I don't think people talk about enough, it's, I think, still a really good film. Number three, I have Star Wars The Force Awakens, and this is a Star Wars film that seems to have had a interesting relationship. When it came out, everyone loved it, everyone praised it, and it feels like more and more since it's come out, people have been a little more critical of it, and some of it has hurt as some of the stuff it's set up doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, we could be here forever, like, hey, is Finn possibly going to be a Jedi? That goes nowhere. What about the Knights of Ren? That goes really nowhere. It's a film that, but I think, and yeah, I can understand. It kind of, it does copy and paste the plot of A New Hope, though. Then again, you could argue. Then again, a lot of films do copy templates of others, and yeah, it does rely a lot on nostalgia. But I'll get some stuff out of the way. There are some scenes I really do love, and I don't think get enough talk about. The scene where Han Solo dies, I think, is a great scene with great emotion and an epic score by John Williams. Oh yeah, John Williams is the GOAT, and he brought his A game for every Star Wars film, except he did not do Rogue One and Solo, which I don't know if that's a good call by him. So there's some great scenes. The Falcon flight scene is really good. It's great looking as well. I mean, I remember seeing this in theaters and being pumped, and so maybe I have a bit of nostalgia for this, but it's got its problems for sure. But I think at the end of the day, it's a fun film with a lot of epic stuff in it. Rey and Finn, well, yes, what they do with their characters post this film is questionable or fun in this film. There's a lot of epic scenes in it, especially the lightsaber battle at the end between Rey and Kylo Ren is very awesome. So, do I think this film has problems? Sure, but, well, of course every film has problems. I think this is a very good film, and that, like I said, while I think is worthy of being at number three. Coming in at number two, we have Star Wars, the first, or Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, or just Star Wars, whatever you want to call it. And maybe if you were to look up top 10 most important movies ever, this is up there. I mean, this movie completely changed movies and everything. And, it's kind of weird to think where the franchise has, gone since then. I mean, how George Lucas was able to get this made. And, it's a really simple story when you really think about it. It's just, yeah, we gotta save the princess. But George Lucas was able to create this amazing world. He was able to create, the Force, the lightsaber, this great mythology that we all know. He was able to create great heroes in Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Leia, Chewbacca, Obi-Wan, characters who are iconic and have been a part of cinema for almost 40 years, R2-D2 and C-3PO. He created a story in a great world. You had Darth Vader, an intimidating villain. It's simply a important film, and I think it's disrespectful not to put it anywhere within the top two. It's amazing. It's even for a film that's almost 40 years old. Its effects, for some of them are a little dated, but most of them I would say look amazing. It's a great film that's got, I would say it's the definition of an almost perfect film. I don't believe there is a perfect film, but this is obviously a very special film that deserves to be celebrated, and there's a reason why it's considered by some to be one of the most important movies ever made. It probably may be arguably the most important movie ever made. But coming in first place for me, I have Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, the second one, and I think this movie is how it's a little tough to do a sequel better than the original because most sequels are they never quite are able to recapture the magic of the first one. But I think this one is able to take what the first one did really well and do it even better. I think it does stuff like we expand the lore of Star Wars. We introduce more worlds and more characters. The emotion's a lot higher. There's some amazing scenes that are still more memorable. Luke training with Yoda. Han Solo getting trapped in the war, which they parodied awesome in the Lego movie. The scenes in Cloud City are epic and emotional. And then, we all know, probably what is now the greatest twist in every movie history. The only problem is it's really not a twist anymore because now everyone knows it. Seriously, it feels like when you get born, that's something that's inserted into your brain. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. It's amazing. I think, I would argue both this and the first one are 1A and 1B. This is truly an amazing film. It takes everything that was great about the first film and I think does it even better. And I think I would argue, while John Williams is amazing in every film, this is the one that brought his A game, and I think it has the great. This is the we got the da 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 da. This is the film that invented nerd culture, in my opinion. It's when we think of all the iconic Star Wars characters, they kind of came from this. Even characters who, like Boba Fett, like that character, you could replace his scenes with a normal stormtrooper, and they would not change the film. But he became this very iconic character. We even got Lando. This is one of the most iconic films ever made. And again, George Lucas didn't direct it. It was directed by a guy named Irvin Kershner, who was a more veteran, and I think that's kind of why this film is considered by many the best. And this is a great film. It's iconic. I probably could spend the next 40 minutes, whatever, talking about how this is a great movie. So, this is my personal favorite Star Wars film, and again, I think it's the best ever. So that's my Star Wars ranking. Did you enjoy it? Awesome. Did you hate it? Oh no. So, again, guys, this is just my opinion. There's no right or wrong answer, and I think you should be free to have your own opinion. If you think the prequels were misunderstood and that you like them, that's amazing. Do you think the sequels are unfairly overhated and you actually enjoy them? That's also great. It's your. Do you think Star Wars is lame and stupid? That's also good. As long as it's your opinion and no one else is making it for you. So, that's my video on Star Wars. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Also, please subscribe. Or don't. Goodbye.